Unfortunately, it is most likely over for the following Dynasty football players. And today's video probably is going to be viewed with a lot of negativity from my end. That's not my intention. My intention is just to tell you guys that it's probably over. The long-term outlook for these Dynasty players does not look very good. So, not meaning to be negative, but just telling you why I will not have much stock of the following players. Do me a massive favor, go ahead and smash that like button. Before you even get into the video, I want you to tell me, just pause it here. Who do you think it's over for? It's over in Dynasty. There's no more value long-term. Let me know in the comments below. All right, to be clear, right now is probably a very difficult time to get good value for the first player I'm going to talk about, but I do believe there will be a time in the offseason where you can jump on an offer to send this player away. That is first round pick last year, Quinton Johnson. According to the community, he's wide receiver 50, my wide receiver 47, somewhere in between there. So right now, again, difficult time to sell, but here's what's difficult with Quinton Johnson. He had every single opportunity to show up this year, and he didn't. He had the kind of opportunities that most rookie wide receivers dream of. Firstly, attached to what I would say an elite producing wide receiver or quarterback for wide receivers in Justin Herbert. He had a great quarterback is what I'm trying to say. Mike Williams, one of the best weapons on his team, tore his ACL in week 3. He was out for the year. Joshua Palmer, the guy who was backing up Mike Williams, missed 7 games with an injury after their bye week. Keenan Allen missed the final 4 games. There was injuries all over this receiving core. And more specifically, Mike Williams didn't play a game after week 3. So from week 4 onwards, Quinton Johnson stepped into a lot of opportunity. Look at this. From week 4 onwards, Quinton Johnson played 74% of the snaps. He ran 29.6 routes per game, 25th best amongst wide receivers in that time span. Here's where it gets ugly. His targets per route run was 0.14. That's 150th amongst wide receivers. And all this while running more routes per game than Chris Olave, Amari Cooper, and Michael Pittman, by the way. His yards per route run, 0.98, 132nd. Right? His yards per route run, right around Little Jordan Humphreys this year. River Craycraft, Paris Campbell. His targets per route run at 132nd, right around Jalen Tolbert, Scotty Miller, Jalen Guytons of the world. I mean, these are not great numbers. His receiving yards per game, 28.9, 77th. His team yards, so the percentage of the receiving yards of his team, 12.2%. His first read target share, 13.2%. His contested catch rate, 136th. His fantasy points per game, 74th. Could you guys imagine if I told you last year when we were doing rookie drafts that Quinton Johnson was drafted in the first round to the Chargers and Mike Williams went down for the year, and I told you he averaged 6.2 points per game when he became a starter? It's so rough. I cannot see a pathway forward, and I think a lot of people are going to be putting him out as a player to buy low on. If you put Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Puka Nacua, Jaden Reed, Tank Dell in the same situation as Quinton, they're even more highly respected rookies today than what they are on their current teams. Now, if we look at his rookie season comps, historically, it doesn't fare very well. We use RotoViz's screener to find statistical comps for his entire rookie year. So you'll see on the screen, anyone that has a red dot next to their name, that player never finished top 70 in points per game in fantasy. A yellow dot indicates that they never finished top 35, and the green dot means that they were superstars. So if anyone loves QJ, you could hold on to these outliers. Antonio Brown, a very similar rookie season than Quinton Johnson. Jordy Nelson, again, a very similar season in his rookie year to Quinton Johnson. Those guys obviously developed into absolute superstars. Antonio Brown, one of the best fantasy assets in the last decade. So there is obviously, I guess, reason for hope, but there's a lot more reds than there are greens on this list. Now, you have to think about it as well. What is the goal of this organization heading into 2024? Well, they need Justin Herbert to succeed, and they are clearing house. There'll be a new GM, a new head coach. This entire organization is getting flipped on its head. It's pretty clear to the owner, based on the moves that he's made, that they didn't believe Quinton Johnson was the right pick. So whoever's coming in that staff has no allegiance to Quinton Johnson. It doesn't matter for their career if he succeeds or if he does not. That's concerning to me. The metrics are concerning to me. The disappointing year, despite the opportunity, I feel like it's over, and I'm sorry to say. Ideally, at some point, when this team gets a new head coach, a new GM, people are going to start making content about Quinton Johnson as a buy low. I promise you it's going to happen. At that point, do everything you can to get an early to mid-second round. If you get the 206 right now, take it. If at some point you think you can get the 201 to the 203, beautiful. Wait for that, but I don't want this player on my team. All right, the second guy, and again, I don't mean to be negative here, guys. I'm sorry. But I think it's over for Josh Jacobs, Jingleheimer Schmidt. The community has him somewhere between RB13 and RB15. He is my RB18 in my rankings today. That will only get worse when the rookies join our rankings. But simply put, this doesn't have to be that difficult. Josh Jacobs was not good this year. He wasn't. He was not good. In 2023, he had the 71st best yards per carry. And by the way, all the numbers I'm about to tell you, I gave him a minimum of 30 attempts. So I helped him out here. I tried to help him out. I could have taken away any qualifier with the rushing attempts and it would have been way worse, but minimum 30 attempts, he was 71st amongst running backs in yards per carry. His explosive run rate, 2.1%, 66th. Missed tackles forced per attempt, 60th. Yards after contact per attempt, 70th. His stuff rate, which was the percentage of runs that didn't go for more than 2 or 3 yards, he had the 22nd highest rate, over 50% of his runs. His PFF run grade was 55th. And if you compare these numbers from 2022, they're all down. His yards per carry, almost a yard and a half per carry down. Like, that is really, really bad. His explosive run rate, double down, right? We're going down. His missed tackles forced per attempt are down. His yards after contact per attempt drastically down. Stuff percentage goes up. His PFF run grade, he was the number 1 graded running back last year. And like we mentioned earlier, he's a 55th graded running back this year. The Raiders took some heat for not signing him to a long-term deal, but I personally think they probably made the right move. And a new situation is going to bring new question marks because Josh Jacobs is going to be a free agent heading into the 2024 offseason. Based off what he did this year, I find it difficult to believe that the Raiders are going to franchise tag him again and pay him all that money. Now, do they bring him back on a discount deal? Sure. There's a scenario here where he comes back to the Raiders and selling him is the wrong move. I will recognize that. However, it's safe to say his future with the Raiders is more unclear today than it ever has been, especially considering how well Zamir White filled in for the Raiders in his absence. What did Josh Jacobs thrive on? Why was he a fantasy star in 2022? It was all because of volume. Josh Jacobs in 2022 had the second highest snap percentage of any running back, had the second most rushing attempts, had the most rushing attempt share. So the percentage of his team's rushing attempts, he was number 1 in the NFL that year, 11th in targets, and 3rd in expected fantasy points. So he needs volume to thrive. You know, this is not a Devon Achane type of player where put the ball in his hands 10 to 15 times a game and he's going to go off for fantasy. No, he needs volume to thrive. And that's not unlike many running backs, but we're talking about a league market where running backs very rarely get long-term deals. How can we trust that a team is going to heavily invest into Josh Jacobs? Even further, how can we trust that a team is going to give him the volume that he needs to be a fantasy star? If Jacobs needs volume to dominate, we have to be very careful about how we evaluate him this offseason. Now, what if he gets a bag and he goes to a bad team? Are we going to follow the Miles Sanders route? You know, because the analytics aren't very good this year. Of course, I'm 100% open to being wrong on this one. If he lands in a great spot and he gets discounted as a price, I could be back in. But at this moment, I don't think it's wise to hold on to him. Ideally, if you can get a first-round pick, that is beautiful. I'm not saying it absolutely will happen. In some leagues, it's probably possible. In others, it's probably not. But any first-round pick in any year. If you can't get it in 24, how about 2025? People always undervalue future first-round picks. All right, on to the third player, Jerry Jeudy. Yes, I unfortunately believe it's probably over for Jerry Jeudy, and I think there is a sell high window because of free agency this year. For me, with Jeudy, if it was going to happen, I feel like it would have happened already. I'm not sure there's ever been a receiver that's been given more grace from the Dynasty community than Jerry Jeudy. Look at his 4 years in the NFL so far. His best year was 2022, where he averaged 13.6 points per game. Outside of that, all 3 of his other seasons, he averaged under 10 PPR points per game. And he's had 2 seasons with at least 100 targets. He's averaging 10.2 PPR points per game in his career. Can we all agree at this point? And I was in on him in redraft last year. I was actually really excited because of what he did with Russ to end the season. But can we all agree at this point that he's probably just a complimentary piece, a guy who has upside to be a top 24 player, but will never get into that top 12, won't even sniff it. So there's going to be 3 reasons people are still in on Jeudy and probably disagreeing with me right now. Number 1, they're going to talk about the fact that he was a first-round pick. Doesn't matter at this point. It really doesn't. He didn't become who we wanted him to be. Number 2, they're going to talk about how he had bad quarterback play in Denver. And that is 100% fair. What would have happened to Jerry Jeudy's career had he gone to Dallas instead of CeeDee Lamb? What would that have looked like for Jerry Jeudy playing with Dak Prescott? The issue is, despite his bad quarterback play, we have seen good players overcome that in the past. Terry McLaurin with the Commanders, Chris Olave his rookie year, Michael Pittman, Amari Cooper this year and last year, DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, George Pickens to an extent, right? He's shown flashes. And the third reason people are still going to be in on Jeudy is because he is a free agent, and that is the reason that you could potentially still sell him, okay? I personally don't see a reason to believe he's going to be some riser out of nowhere, but the issue is, even in free agency, he's not a tier 1 talent. You got T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, Calvin Ridley, Hollywood Brown. These are the guys that are going to get the bag. I'm not sure what sort of contract Jerry Jeudy, he's not even deserving of a Christian Kirk type of contract, if we're honest. Christian Kirk did more in Arizona, in my opinion, for the team. I haven't looked this up statistically, but he meant more to that Arizona team than what Jerry Jeudy has meant to the Broncos since being drafted. And again, like all these takes, I could be absolutely wrong. Maybe a change of scenery does revitalize his career, or he could just be a middle of the pack guy. So you want to sell him for, a second round pick at this point. And obviously timing could be crucial on what sort of value you get back in return. All right, here's what I'll say. I'm about to get into 2 takes that are very hot, and I know a lot of people will disagree with me. Just before I get into it, I have some very exciting news. On the 1st of February, we are releasing version 2 of our 2024 rookie report. If you're a Dynasty junkie and you want to dive into the 2024 rookies, here's an example of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s profile. Version 2 is going to have more players, more features. I mean, we are very, very excited about it, and we have had great feedback so far. You can see some of the other perks as well that you would get if you signed up with our promo code LAND. Make sure you choose the Mother Flocker tier, and you're going to get everything that you see here on the screen, including a Dynasty team review. All right, the 4th and 5th player, like I said, I think it's a little bit harsh for me to say that these guys, it's over for them. But let me just say, I just don't have an interest in owning them regardless of the outcome. DeAndre Swift is one of those names. DeAndre Swift, a guy I was out on last offseason, and it's been up and down. His season was just constant roller coaster. It really was. RB20 finish on the outside seems pretty decent, but anyone who owned DeAndre Swift, don't lie to yourself. It was tough owning DeAndre Swift. There was so much up and down. You started the season, he wasn't the starter in week 1. Kenneth Gainwell was. Then Kenneth Gainwell goes down with an injury. In week 2, DeAndre Swift put up over 27 PPR fantasy points. And we're like, oh my God, he's a league winner. Everyone on Twitter is verifying him as a league winner and saying that they love him. But he had a really rough 2 parts of the year. From weeks 2 to 9, he was great. From weeks 11 to 18, which it's not good that you end the year in a nosedive, not very good. Let's look at this. So from weeks 2 to 9 versus weeks 11 to 18, these are averages. His rushing attempts go down. His total touches per game go down. I mean, over 5 per game down. His fantasy points per game, he goes from being a top 10 running back in points per game to out of the top 35, 38th in points per game. In that time span, from weeks 2 to 9, he was the RB4. From weeks 11 to 18, and this is not per game, the RB30, of course, keeping in mind bye weeks play a part there. He went from a must-start player to a boom-bust every single week. In fact, from weeks 11 to 18, he only had 1 top 10 finish and 5 finishes outside the top 25. My biggest concern is I don't trust his future. I just don't. Let's look back at the trade on draft day. day 2 when he went from Detroit to Philadelphia. So they swapped 7th round picks, and Detroit acquired a 4th round pick for DeAndre Swift. A lot of moving pieces, but again, the 4th rounder was the main piece there. I went back and looked at all the running backs traded for a 4th round pick in the last decade. I wanted to see what sort of longevity they had in the league historically when a team decides we're going to get a day 3 pick for you. That's what we're happy with. So the last time it happened was 2021. Sony Michel went from the Patriots to the Los Angeles Rams. Sony Michel only played until 2022, from not long in the league. He had a high of 8.6 points per game since that trade, and he never got a long-term deal with any team. Jay Ajayi in 2017 went from the Dolphins to the Eagles. He played for Philly from 2017 to 2019, never finished as a top 30 points per game player, and averaged less than 8 rushing attempts per game in the last 2 years as an Eagle. Just fell apart. Now we're going to go all the way back again to when Capri Bibbs went from the Broncos to the 49ers. He was cut by the 49ers before the season even began. He played an unimportant role in Washington. Now, Chris Ivory went from the Saints to the Jets in 2013 for a 4th round pick. He played 3 years for the Jets, and the good news is he actually had a really good year in 2015 where he finished as the RB11 on a per game basis. However, he averaged RB31 in points per game over those 3 years combined. So one good year, but mostly bad. So look, if you want to take a shot on the talent and hope that he joins an offense that's even better than the Eagles, guys, that is one of the best rushing offensive lines you could possibly be behind. He was set up for a lot of success this year. It didn't pan out. If you think he's going to get into a better offense this free agency, because this team didn't sign Miles Sanders to a long-term deal, there's no reason for us to believe they will do that for DeAndre Swift. But if you think he's going to be in a better situation this time next year, go for it. Like, honestly, do it. You could be right. However, I believe his best football for fantasy is probably behind him. Ideally, if you can get a early to mid 2nd round pick because of his bump in free agency, that's ideal. Again, I'm not saying all these things are possible, but see what you can accomplish. All right, and the last player that I am kind of out on, and a lot of people are going to say it's too early, and I totally get it. I'm probably being too harsh with this name. That is Will Levis. So I've been labeled a Will Levis hater for a while. Started last year when we started talking about the 2023 incoming rookies. I didn't understand the hype. Everyone had him top 5 pick, top 10 pick, locked and loaded 1st round. I didn't get it. I saw the arm talent. I saw the athlete that he was. But when it came to quarterbacking, the actual position playing quarterback, I had a lot of concerns. Now, he goes in the 2nd round. He's had an up and down year. Let's review his rookie season. He had his first start in week 8 after they were on a bye in week 7, and he went nuclear versus the Atlanta Falcons. He had 4 passing touchdowns and over 34 fantasy points. And out of nowhere, which I found interesting, a lot of people were tagging me. Out of nowhere, I'm getting people tagging me saying, you were wrong on Will Levis. He was always the truth. He was always going to be a superstar. And those people in week 8 came out of nowhere, came out of the woodwork to say that they loved Will Levis. You can tell I'm biased here, right? They all disappeared. After week 8, I didn't hear a squeak from anyone that was a Will Levis stan. What happened? Well, he came back to earth in a big way. In fact, week 8 was Will's only top 14 finish of the entire year. Okay? From weeks 9 to 15. And by the way, I could have gone from weeks 9 to 17. I was really fair with Will here. If I added week 17 into his averages, it would have destroyed these numbers. So I did weeks 9 to 15, games when he was healthy, outside of that blow-up game versus Atlanta. Here's where he ranked. In completion percentage, he was 40th. And I added a minimum of 30 dropbacks. So again, these numbers could have been much worse. I gave him a good qualifier here. Completion percentage, 58.2%, 40th in the NFL. Again, 32 NFL teams. His turnover-worthy plays, 11. That's the 2nd highest in that time span amongst quarterbacks. His passing yards per game, 19th. His quarterback rating, 32nd. His PFF passing grade, 34th. His fantasy points per game, 35th amongst quarterbacks. And his fantasy finish in that time span was quarterback 22. So not a very good rest of the year outside of that one game versus Atlanta. In fact, from weeks 9 to 15, he had less points per game than Easton Stick, Aiden O'Connell, Taylor Heineke. Desmond Ridder, Tyson Bagent, Tommy DeVito, Mitchell Trubisky. At the end of the day, I think some people might have taken a victory lap too early, and maybe I'm victory lapping his poor end of the year too early as well. But at the end of the day, there are still huge question marks around this player, okay? My concern coming in, watching the film, was his lack of ability to sense pressure. I'd never seen anything like this from a potential first-round pick. His lack of ability to sense pressure was honestly astounding. That still shows up in the NFL. He doesn't navigate the pocket well. Maybe he takes a huge step in 2024 and I'm completely wrong, but it's still a big weakness of his. And you have to ask yourself, the Titans just got rid of their head coach. They got a new head coach coming in. Is that head coach going to want to bank his entire career on Will Levis? Or will it be like a bridge quarterback? You have to make that decision. Ideally, if you can get any first round pick in a super flex league, you take that and you go for it. So, hey, I don't want to be a hater. I know this is a negative video, but it's okay to make content like this sometimes. I hope you guys get where I'm coming from. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like the video, and we'll see you in the next one. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.